as governments and media continue their barrage of climate propaganda.
The National Climate Action Plan I unveiled will cut carbon pollution, protect our country from the impacts of climate change, and lead the world in a coordinated assault on a changing climate.
Feeding Americans with failed predictions for man-made global warming.
And these changes are picking up speed.
Mother Nature has not heard their message as temperatures plummet across the planet.
The National Weather Service already calling this a crippling, potentially historic blizzard.
This Arctic blast is not just another winter storm.
A massive blizzard barreling down on the northeast corridor.
A growing number of climate scientists are challenging the establishment wisdom.
Not the weather extremes that's important, it's the trend lines. And trend lines are clearly showing we're heading into a cold era.
John Casey's bestseller Dark Winter explains what's at stake with the coming Little Ice Age as politicians bicker over carbon emissions.
It was never about the science to start with. It was always a political agenda.
What were you thinking? Why did you not act?
The world has never been spoken to quite this way. We've never been warned like this before, all of us, about climate change, nor have so many countries agreed quite this much on the clear and present danger it represents. Here is the takeaway. Unless the world changes course quickly and dramatically, the fundamental systems that support human civilization are at risk. This is all coming from the UN.
We've been told that Earth's climate has been changing. And for 30 years, scientists supporting the United Nations view have inserted the idea of man-made global warming into our consciousness, into our politics, schools, and even our churches.
There's one issue that will define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other, and that is the urgent and growing threat of a changing climate. We cannot condemn our children and their children to a future that is beyond their capacity to repair.
With current climate trends setting record cold temperatures, many are questioning global warming theories. And a growing number of climate scientists are seeing that global temperature data no longer shows a heating trend, and that most of the global warming predictions have failed to come true. And scientists who challenge the global warming consensus are now targeted for attack. John Casey is a highly credentialed scientist and engineer who has stood up to the establishment on global warming. He sees solar cycles as the primary driver of climate change, not carbon emissions. Casey's controversial new bestseller, Dark Winter, argues that global warming has ended and a new, more ominous threat faces humanity. A period of plummeting temperature that's enveloping the planet that will radically change life on Earth, including political unrest, famines, mass migrations of people, and even a wave of unprecedented earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Casey, a former White House Space Program advisor and space shuttle engineer, is the president of the Space and Science Research Corporation, a respected climate science organization. He has been a voice of reason challenging global warming propaganda, as he shows, along with a number of leading climate scientists, that the Earth has actually entered a period of rapid cooling as sunspot activity begins its downward trend. Not a member of the academic elite, Casey's scientific, real-world credentials set him apart.
According to NASA and NOAA's own science data and their satellite data that we monitor, the Arctic and the Antarctic are both getting colder. Sea ice is growing rapidly, and so the reality is quite different between what the warmists have predicted and what is really happening with our climate. This is even more graphic when you look at the relational cycle theory and what it predicted. For example, we predicted that the global warming would end between 2007 and 2010. We had a news conference in 2008 to announce that it had in fact already ended, that a new cold era had begun. All of the predictions then, and there are many from the Space and Science Research Corporation and other global cooling researchers, have in general come to pass, whereas most of the major predictions from the UN and even our own U.S. science agencies in the last 6 years have failed utterly.
Al Gore, President Obama, the UN, and other global warming leaders, rather than admit their predictions have not come true, have chosen to attack the very scientists who have been proven right and have stood up to global warming narratives. Dr. Willie Soon of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics studies the impact of solar cycles on Earth's climate. Dr. Soon receives funding from the fossil fuel industry for his research because scientists backed by global warming funding have cut him off.
The sun, of course, in terms of its light energy output, is probably the only true external driver of the Earth climate system, because there is no other forces on Earth that would supply that amount of energy for the air to move around, the ocean current to move around, or trees to grow. So there is no doubt that the sun is the main driver and supplier of energy to the Earth weather and climate system. They are clearly promoting the vision that if we do not cut our carbon dioxide emission, disaster, crisis, whichever bad connotation you can find, will come to Earth. So it is that kind of alarmism that appalls me as a scientist. There is no one in the world who would insist that everything is having to do with the sun. All we are trying to do is that there's this plausible picture of how the sun could cause some of the changes in the climate system. Why not study it carefully? It's very, very difficult, in my opinion, to try to insist and suggest that carbon dioxide, even as of today, when we emit this carbon dioxide, is going to drive the climate system. It's a complete false picture.
Climate change or climate variation occurs all the time, as it has for millions of years. These changes in climate are produced by, we believe, changes in solar or solar system gravitational field and energy output from the sun. As a result, we have studied, and I specifically have studied, a family of cycles that do cause this climate change. That includes a 206-year-long cycle, which is the one that is changing over now and ended the past global warming and has begun a new cycle of global cooling.
In January 2015, President Obama declared 2014 to be the hottest year on record, despite recent revelations that data he used is flawed or fabricated.
2014 was the planet's warmest year on record.
As the debate today rages over man-made CO2 and its link to global warming, and despite claims of 2014 being the hottest year ever, there has been a problem. Analysis reveals that for the past decade, global temperatures have, in fact, stabilized, and that some areas of the planet are actually cooling.
We've heard in the State of the Union address from President Obama that 2014 was the warmest year on record. Is that true? Is that accurate? Certainly the global warming camp will go along with that. I mean, this is the President of the United States making this statement. But on the scientific community side, those of us who follow temperature measurement and temperature trends know that the President wasn't accurate once more in his proclamations on climate change. 2014, according to 5 major global data sets that we follow on global temperature, both atmospheric and oceanic, says that it may have been the 3rd or 6th warmest in the last 15, but was clearly not the warmest. What we've been told for quite some time now is that climate change of any kind is caused by mankind. That is a modification of what used to be called man-made global warming. When it became apparent that the Earth was cooling, that climate terminology shifted to just climate change, and in my opinion was simply a political co-op to include virtually any change of climate somehow being blamed on mankind. It is more a political definition than a realistic one.
A review of the 5 major global temperature data sets, records for the last 18 years, are far from conclusive that global warming has continued despite what we are being told.
The idea of science is you're really supposed to be skeptical, so there's always a quest to verify what we know, to understand that we haven't made a mistake, and that we continue on and develop science. If we've closed our mind, if we close the doors, we are now shutting ourselves out from the real truth, which is what science is all about after all.
How did global warming become a global obsession? A Hollywood storyline was not a bad way to start. In the next segment, John Casey confronts the conventional thinking on climate change.
It's pretty rare that you'll encounter somebody who says the problem you're trying to solve simply doesn't exist.
Make sure you get your copy of John Casey's bestseller, Dark Winter, available at bookstores everywhere, or check out our free offer at newsmax.com/darkwinter.
Millions of Americans are turning to Newsmax TV on DirecTV 349, Dish 223, and Verizon Fios 115. Online at newsmaxtv.com, Roku, or Google TV with our free app from your iPhone or Android. So watch Newsmax TV now.